platforms. And to discuss this very pertinent issue, we have with us today Geeta Seshu. She's a journalist and media analyst. She has written extensively about media literacy, digital access, and online abuse of women in India. We have Bharati, who is a development practitioner at Confluence of Gender Health, Rights and Technology. She's currently leading and scaling Tech Saki at Point of View, which is an omni multilingual channel which helps women suffering or women affected by uh, problems which happen on the digital realm. Um, we also have Sairi, who will be joining shortly. She's a technology entrepreneur working for women empowerment. She is the founder of She Rose, a community platform which provides resources, opportunities, and support to women. Thank you so much for joining us today, Bharti and Geeta. Uh, I would now like to move to the discussion and open the floor for panelists. Can you please shed some light on the linkage that is there between gender identity and violence that takes place in the digital space and its effect on women and other gender minorities? Can you also describe the kind of chilling effect that causes uh, on digital speech or online speech? Over to you, Geeta.
Um, Hi. Thank you so much, Ratanmik, for having me in this session. I was just thinking when you started your opening remarks that we have been discussing this and talking about the issue of online harassment of women for perhaps the longest time that women have interacted with the internet. And very recently, I think Oxfam came out uh, with a study on the number of women who are actually using online media. And the figures are still very depressing. We are still nowhere near uh, empowering women to be able to use online media as much as they should. And we all know how important it is to have access to digital media as part of the fundamental rights to freedom of expression. It has become even more central today because it's linked to almost every aspect of our lives, whether it is in commerce, whether it is education, or even accessing health or services, government programs, policies. Just about everything requires that digital identity, which women do not have. So that is about the first aspect which I really feel we need to address. Now, the second issue that we need to look at is this question of harassment of women who do access online media. And that harassment it takes multiple forms. So it's not, we know of the very visible instances of women who are prominent voices in society. There are women who speak, women who are journalists, who write, who hold an opinion, lawyers, human rights activists, academics, just about anyone. And now I think with the bully by that, the horrible, uh, the auctions of so-called auctions of the identities of Muslim women, the range of women who were Muslim and who spoke out and had an identity online um, is actually very revealing. They were not just journalists, there were women who did a lot of other work, women who were social workers, activists, who were school teachers, students. So any woman in public space is being targeted for harassment. Now, on the other hand, we have a situation where you don't have tech companies coming forward as much as they should uh, to even respond to this and regulate this. So it takes a long time for women to be able to get some kind of relief. You have governments and so law enforcing agencies who drag their feet, who don't even take action when they are supposed to and as quickly as they are supposed to. So there is a denial in many ways, and we are still in a situation so many years later, almost 20 years after we started having this kind of very active engagement of women online. We are still talking about the same issues of access, of censorship, of harassment. I don't want to continue here because I'm sure Bharti will also have something to say. But we really
Uh,
need to address this, the fact that we haven't seemed to have moved forward.
I would now like Bharti to share her experience, especially because she deals with tech Saki of point of view. So if she can add to the conversation from her experiences.
Sure. I mean, Geeta said, gave like a very amazing overview of how, in digital spaces, gender and sexual minorities, or by virtue of someone's identity, we experience a very unique and manifested way of everyday life in the larger world out there. Maybe let me just begin by sharing that that there are a couple of studies which roughly estimate that women in India are 46% less likely than men to own mobiles, and even among that 46%, only 11% of women have internet access. So we see such a big digital divide, and with that, I'd like to showcase a few stories or case studies from Tech Saki itself, and that our responders on an everyday basis kind of deal with, and assuage, empathize, and support callers with various sorts of information. Varying from when a young woman calls in with a complaint about having lost money because somebody on Google Pay sent a message saying that, okay, I have paid you money, and actually numerically wrote that number. And this person who was calling Texaki assumed that that number is equivalent to the receipt of the money itself. And that person went a further step ahead and did the same thing with another quantum of number and said, hey, by mistake I had I've paid you twice, so pay me back. And the caller did end up sending back money to this person, and then realize what has happened. And more than having lost money, the caller was so aghast that she will have to now inform this to her husband, and was worried about how her husband will take to the news of her having given money away. So even just with this example, you can see that what's really happening in the real world is manifesting in very unique and different ways in the digital world, and that there is morbid fear of, even for those women and girls and sexual and gender minorities who claim digital spaces, have face some sort of ways that act as a barrier for them to freely and fully participate digitally. Let me stop with that, and I'm sure Monica probably has a fair bit to add as well.
Welcome, Monica. Thank you so much for joining. Monica is a posh trainer at Chiros, and you can now go ahead and share your experience.
So thank you, Bharti, and thank you, Geeta. I think that was for sharing, and I think what you really hit the nail on the mark. So I would say when you're talking about the kind of bullying which goes on, and I think this has been of particular importance, or I would say concern to us, because Shiro's started as an online tech platform for women, and when we started the Shiro's app, our first the idea behind it was to provide a safe online space for women where they could freely participate, where they could have communities, where they could freely speak out. And while we had a very strong way in which we would try to filter out, you know, the men from women in this online space, what we did see was that having women on board, having women as a part, of, and knowing when they knew that they were in a protected online space, we saw women opening out and sharing a lot more. They were more participative, they were more forthcoming, they were more willing to share. And when I'm talking about sharing, they were sharing stories that probably they would never have dreamed of sharing online. So we saw that, with the moment they found it was a protected space, a space where they could freely express themselves. So it was like, what they couldn't say on social media, they could freely share here without any. And we had a very strict guideline around. So there was a time when we even had women coming and reporting any suspicious activity. If they felt that someone they were interacting with was not who they seemed, we had women and we had given them that access that they could come and report this to us. And we saw them doing that, and that is one way that Sheroes, the app, and the communities on Sheroes really thrived. So we had different communities on Sheroes, which were where women could come and talk about relationships. So the kind of conversations that we had, women, where they were talking about things like sexuality, where they were talking about alternate sexuality, where they were sharing the deepest personal problems, where they were sharing instances of abuse. I don't think, that women could have done that in other places. So one is, of course, like I think both Geeta and Bharti have pointed out that the anonymity that social media gives, in a way, I think really magnifies the kind of patriarchal mindset that is there in society, where people feel that they can, the things that they would not do otherwise because of that anonymity on social media or that anonymity online, they can go and talk or behave in ways that they would not think of doing so online. And we also see that giving women that safe space really helps them build and be able to express themselves better. And I think for a woman to be able to express herself better is the first step in her building and even having that confidence in her own abilities and identity. So when you have that safe space, not only are you able to express yourself, but you're also able to, grow from the kind of, I would say, positive affirmations that you're getting from other women. And women I've seen are more liable or they're more willing to do that for others. And through that, I think through the community spaces that we created, we've seen women really thrive and grow, find their voice, so to say. So I don't think I'll go on more. There's a lot more that I would like to share, but I think maybe we can go on to what the others wish to share as well.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Monica. That was really insightful. So, I would now like to move to the second point for discussion, and that is that we often see that these attacks, especially on a broader social media platform like Twitter or Instagram, happens or are targeted towards individuals who are, trying to bring out certain sort of stories or narratives out there, such as journalists or human rights activists, lawyers, political figures, etc. So, how do you think that this violence is actually perpetrated not only to have the immediate effect of silencing the speaker themselves at that point, but also to sort of create a barrier from keeping these stories or narratives from outside the mainstream narratives? If Geeta, you can start and
Yeah, sorry. I'm just trying to, understand this question. Um, the At least when it comes to journalists, I can say that what usually happens is the journalists who have been targeted, um, and some of whom are very shaken because of the extent to which the abuse goes, from rape, death threats, doxing, stalking. So it's really, people who manage to find out where they live and then violate their privacy. Um, so there is a huge sense of shock and a sense of being vulnerable. And I know a lot of women journalists who do say that they feel extremely helpless despite the fact that they're well-known figures and that they're used to, otherwise, because of their work, they're used to dealing with people in authority and questioning people in authority and then find themselves extremely helpless. So there is that silencing. The other silencing is really about not just their story from the mainstream, but the stories that they want to say, they want to speak about. So usually, we when we talk about the censorship and silencing of journalists, we are looking at two kinds of silencing. One is the silencing of the individual itself, and the other is the silencing of the work that that individual wants to bring to the public domain. So both happen.
Thank you so much. Monica, if you can add to that.
Uh, yes, I think to just go back to what I was saying earlier, that the fact is that women still don't have a voice. And I think Geeta spoke about how women journalists, what they are facing. I would say all women are facing that. If you were go on any public platform, and I see women not just who have an opinion or even wish to express themselves in the way that they are dressing or in the kind of pictures that they want to put out, the kind of trolling that they tend to face or the kind of comments that they tend to face makes us really feel that, even that anonymity which is afforded to everyone, it is not there for women. I just like to share a small instance that I came across yesterday. So I think someone came up on LinkedIn, someone who's very open, and this was someone, of course, not from India, but they are these student escorts who are very open about what they are doing to fund their own education, and had put out certain pictures which of course may not have been very appropriate for LinkedIn, but the kind of trolling that she faced while she was trying to own up to what she was doing. So while of course we may have that debate around whether that platform is appropriate for that kind of content or not, but here was someone who owns up to what she's doing and is okay with what she's doing and has got her LinkedIn profile in that name, that this is what she's doing to fund her education. And the kind of trolling that she faced. So it really makes us feel that and I think personally, most women think twice over what they're posting, the kind of comments they're going to get. And a lot of them, the moment they post, would unmute the comments also. So I think this is something we really need to look out into, is that why don't we have that public space where we can express what we are? And this is not just in terms of the kind of work that women are doing, you know, it is also in how they're expressing themselves. So I think there's still a very long way to go where I think a woman hesitates to express herself, hesitates to express her opinions because of the fear of what she's going to face up to it after that. Not only that, I think even if she's a professional, somehow she feels that her professional credibility is going to be questioned the moment she expresses a certain opinion. So I think it is still very unfortunate, but I think that is where we really need to question how far we have come as a society, or how far our online spaces, not just I think in India, but how far our online spaces safe for women anywhere in the world.
That's true. I think it's just the environment of fear that is created, which makes you censor even before you put anything out, and then after you've said something or put out anything, again you question it because of the reaction that you get. That's very true. I would also like to ask Bharti to add to this.
Yeah, taking off from what Monica shared, we all have, uh, I mean, we all have lives in this world where we want to live very freely and express with a certain sense of liberty and not feel limited, and that is our right. Yet the online space is one medium for us to do so, and in the current world, we're really inhibited. So at Tech Saki, many times when we do have people and callers come in saying, "Okay, I did something, but I'm wondering whether I shouldn't have, simply because it's not a common or popular idea to put yourself at risk in a certain way or perceived as a risk in a certain way. We always try to find a way where we assuage the person who's calling, and let them know that this is something that happens to a lot of people by virtue of their gender, and it's not got to do with anything else. And by reassuring that it's a lot more common, and also telling them that it was not fair and right for them to for that to have happened to them, and then providing more technical support is how we're approaching it at Texaki.
Can
That
I
was,
also add
yes.
here? I'm sorry to be interrupting, but I really want to add is that I see a lot of the trolling of women when they're expressing their opinions is also coming from other women,
Yeah.
and because again, it's not just gender specific.
Hmm.
So it's not that it's just the men who are doing it, or but I've seen it's a lot, even people of their own gender. A lot of trolling is coming from there. So somewhere I think I also feel that this level. Of course, there is the fact that on public platforms, and they can be very toxic spaces. It's not just that only women are facing it; even men possibly are facing that level. But I do feel it is a lot more for women.
I think, Geeta, we can't hear you. You're muted.
Sorry, I think the nature of abuse that women face is different, irrespective of whether women are trolling other women or men are trolling women. It's the nature of abuse. It's the way in which women are targeted, which we are worried about. Yeah, sure, women do. There are some women who do troll other women, and especially in a situation where the world is so divided and there is so much of partisan engagement and very aggressive hate that is being used in by social media platforms, you know. It's something that has it's like a poison that has entered the almost all users. So it's not really something that we should look at in terms of whether women are trolling women. I mean, that's a very simplistic uh, sort of equation. The fact is that women who speak out are trolled in a very, very vicious, sexist fashion,
I agree.
unlike men who are also trolled.
Right.
They are mocked, they're ridiculed, they are made fun of, they are taken down, they are roasted, there are various things that happen to men. But the kind of sexual abuse that happens to women is different.
Yes.
And may I add that, irrespective of whether, the gender of the person who breaches a boundary, this psychological effect, the kind of impact that an individual faces, is quite debilitating, and exacerbated based on their social location. So, irrespective of who the abuser is, it doesn't take away from the fact that the focus needs to be a lot more on the consequences of it, in some sense.
Yeah,
True.
absolutely. I mean, from that point you made earlier also, Bharati, about the woman who was fearful of her husband finding out. You said the person who that Google Pay person, the
Yeah.
instance which you all helped out with, the kind of social controls on women who use social media is immense. And we know of instances, we've had documented instances of women who are given mobile phones by boyfriends, for instance, to make use of. And then the boyfriends check, see who they're calling and who they're engaging with. Because they feel they've given them the phone because they control their communication only with the boyfriend and not with anyone else. So in fact, there are women who probably call, other men, but they use different names. They use female names instead. I think there is fabulous, and like I think Ratan
Meek.
Rathanmi had flagged this right at the beginning when she spoke about the feminist internet. And of course, we are going to be as innovative as possible in exploring all the beauty and all the amazing potential that we do have. But but when you have social conditions that like khap panchayats who don't anymore take those kind of very public sort of stands that girls should not use mobile phones, but the controls still exist.
That's true. Especially during the pandemic, the
Yeah.
kind of control, yeah, it went beyond social interactions. It was the education was controlled, how you access education, at what time you can access, all those things were controlled and has severely affected a lot of especially female students and children. Moving on to the next part
Mhm.
is I want to discuss how or in what manner and where is the government and social media platforms lacking to tackle a problem like this, because it's just been increasing and there's a lot of talk about solving these issues, but we also see a very, as Geeta mentioned, a very uh, disinterested or lackadaisical approach towards solving these problems whenever they arise. So, if you can go ahead and add to that.
Okay, who wants to go first?
And Geeta, you can take the lead and then.
Okay, there are two things about this. One is the fact that we have always been saying that social media companies profit from hate, profit from the kind of viciousness and vitriol that is on social media because it increases traffic. So there's been a lot of discussion on this. I don't have to labor this point, but the issue of social media companies and governments tackling harassment is something we have again talked a lot about, but not seen any action either from governments or from social media companies. Today, you have government, especially the government of India, which is taking a very adversarial position with the social media companies and having guidelines and rules that actually restrict a lot of their work. And there's this continuous tussle between the social media companies right now with WhatsApp, earlier with Facebook, and then YouTube, and all of these kind of tensions, which we also know is linked to the business interests of these social media companies. So in this in this standoff, users of social media, whether it's women or men or the entire mass of people who do use social media, are totally powerless, totally, and the social media companies are completely arbitrary. I know of one instance where there were these human rights activists who have just been bumped off WhatsApp, and redressal mechanisms are almost non-existent. One writes to this bot and complains, and that's about it. And even if you complain, it goes into some long, big procedure which doesn't actually provide any kind of relief or redressal. We've had instances on Twitter also. So, when it comes to journalists or people who have access to the heads of these social media companies, then some amount of pressure is put and the social media company responds. But this is not the way it should be. And we are continuously powerless because of this. And Twitter is a great example, actually.
Yeah, that's Monica. Can you add to? So you were, as you were saying,
I
she rose. there are a lot of things which have made that platform safe and where women have found a community and a voice. So if you can, maybe draw some parallels as to what platforms can or should do to create these places more safer.
Yeah. So one is, I think on Shiro's from the very beginning, we have taken this very seriously. Any instance of anything being reported, giving people the freedom to be able to come and report something, looking into that, having the warning system in place. And I think because we had very strict community guidelines on Shiro's, even though it was a women's only space, we wanted it to make it a very safe space for women. And I think that did have a very snowballing effect because actually over time we have seen that it has become a safer and more secure space. So one is, I think, to look into complaints very, very carefully, to be able to address them very carefully. From our point of view, it came because this was a USP. This is what we were setting out to do, that we wanted it to make it a safe space for women to be able to come and express themselves. And what we did see is also that women, the kind of confidence it gave them. So I know many women who came onto Shiro's and said this is the first time that they were scared of speaking this way on other social media platforms. But because they could speak here, they could express, they could find their voice, they could grow on these platforms, they were able to tackle other platforms in a better way. So it is the confidence that they got from expressing themselves which really helped them to be able to really grow. Also because on Shiro's, it was not just a space where they could grow through different communities to explore themselves, to explore their interests. We also, took it one step ahead because Shiro's is now partnering with Google to create a digital, I would say, literacy program for women, where we are actively trying to reach into smaller towns, into tier three cities, into even rural areas, to help women be able to, develop that kind of digital literacy, to be able to develop business skills. And I see this goes hand in hand. As women develop a voice, as they develop that kind of confidence in themselves, as they also begin to understand that this is the first step towards even financial independence, I have seen that the voice becomes stronger. So, of course, I think Geeta has talked very wonderfully about the kind of government controls imposed on social media and what can be done about it. But I think if we are really looking to see women really grow and come into their own, these are spaces we also need to explore, those gender safe spaces for women. Because I have personally seen, and I'll just give you an example. There was this young girl who came on to Shiro's, very quiet, very underconfident, and she used to do this painting on stones. And through Shiro's and the kind of outreach that we had, where we will even, gave partnered with other companies to set up, community bazaars. We did so with Reliance. And there she was able to come, and as she was able to perfect it and begin to even sell. And when she saw that confidence that she gets, and the kind of I would say financial independence that she got from being able to market her products, learn how to market them, she's evolved into a completely different person. And I see her now on Facebook posting these uh, very I would say, these confident videos where she's acting out things, and her stone art has been featured in many periodicals, on many magazines. She's even got that kind of a recognition from the local administration, the local politicians. So I would just say that how this can help women really evolve and come into their own. And I don't know if I'm going off the track, but I really feel this is something that we need to look into, that giving a woman that safe space really helps her to be able to negotiate other spaces in a better way. So
Thank you.
Bharti would also like to add to that.
Yeah.
Sure. I mean, both these stakeholders that you're referring to, I mean, I think at the best, they're protectionists. and at the worst they are more victim blaming and judgmental, and mostly in that spectrum. And the fundamental question here to me is that, how are these stakeholders able to recognize what it means to be violated in an online space? Even with the examples that Geeta shared about journalists being taken off WhatsApp or blocked on Twitter, the act by itself may not be sexual, may not be necessarily vilifying in any sort of obscene way. However, it is really the question of, by virtue of that person being belonging to a certain gender and their position there, thereby allowing them to express something freely and politically, is what is being challenged, and that is really very generalized misogynistic abuse. So we need more recognition in our systems, and we need more understanding of how this manifests in the world, and thereby for these stakeholders to take more tangible and appropriate action.
That's very true. I would now like to ask the attendees if there are any questions, any experiences that you would want to share with the panelists. If there's anything.
So if I can just share a bit from my, work also, because I'm also working as a, an external member. I'm a push trainer with a couple of companies. And I see increasingly there's this tendency that, because we have these trainings happening and, some companies are very particular about making workspaces safe spaces. We see those instances of sexual harassment not happening within the company, within the system itself. We see it being taken out to the social platforms. So instances being reported where, and I think there's, if we go by statistics, there's also the NCW reports that there's been a 50% rise in instances of online harassment ever since the pandemic began.
Yeah.
And that is also because we may try to make these workspaces very safe, but that same harassment is now happening where they are targeting. So they would go and target a female colleague on social media. Instances have happened where the private details have been shared on social media. Sometimes there have been these online meetings where screenshots have been taken and
Mm.
it's been put on social media platforms. It's been put on private chats. So there are these instances of harassment. Even you're trying to make one space very safe for women, but we are seeing it being taken on to other spaces where they feel that they have that access, where they feel that they are able to, negotiate or maybe get away with it. I would rather use the word get away with it because they can't do it within the system, but they're taking it outside the system and doing that. So it's not that the harassment ends. It's just like it continuously begins. I mean, they're looking for more and more spaces where they can do it.
Yeah.
And also, I'd like to, before I end here, maybe, for maybe even Geeta and Bharti and even Ratanmeet, for you to put on into it, that a lot of times I see the nature of the kind of WhatsApp videos being circulated. It is so sexist. On the face of it, there are these, funny TikTok videos, but the bottom line and the way they are portrayed is so sexist, the way women are being portrayed. So
That's
while we have women out here getting a voice, speaking out, coming into their own, we also have, these very insidious attempts being made to maybe silence them or, I would also say put them in their place in some ways.
I think that is something which we as a society also need to question, that despite all the progressive ideas and education, why these things still persist. So that's a very grassroots level change that is required in the mindset. Um, I would also like Geeta and Bharti to make any concluding comments if they have, and then we can wrap it up.
Yeah, hi. Sorry. So I think what Monica said was also really important about the need to create those safe spaces and those safe little um, uh, ecosystems that are protected. But but for me, the issue has always been about the kind of power that media has, social media or other media. Right now, we are talking about social media. And it is this power and this influence that it has which will not allow the disempowered, the marginalized, the have-nots, the people who are at the literally, in the at the contours of the space
Mm.
that media gives them, that media has for them. It keeps them out. And I think when you spoke about the need for a feminist internet, and of course, this is a very, very big internet governance forum.
Mm.
For me, the issue is really about how uh, these marginalized, these disadvantaged, these disempowered people manage to get some toehold and therefore, through that, some kind of power over the media. At this stage, it seems more and more difficult. It seems almost impossible. But one always lives in hope that that is the way we can change.
That's very true. Thank you so much, Geeta. Bharti, if you would want to add to that.
Sure. I mean, as just a last concluding thought, I guess this sort of accountability and holding power to accountability is what might be my last, cliched thought to end the conversation.
Okay, it's also time, so I think we'll wrap this up. Thank you so much, Bharti, Geeta, and Monica for joining us today. This was very insightful, and I hope that conversations like these happen more, and we also see actual practical results. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for having us,
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you, Geeta. Thank you, Bharti. It was very insightful. Thank you.
Monica, Bharati. Good to meet you all and have some interaction. I hope we continue with that.
Likewise.
Yes,
Thanks so
definitely.
much.
Thank you.
Okay. Bye.